Soul Patrol, Jesus 911, two-man car. I agree with Dr. Scott Hahn, where he says, we Catholics, quote, got to recognize the validity of the Novus Ordo Mass. We can also recognize the objective superiority of the traditional Latin Mass, close quote. The fact that the traditional Latin Mass is superior, as Dr. Hahn says it, and I agree, that doesn't mean that the Novus Ordo Mass is not still the actual sacrifice of Jesus on Calvary. It's still that. We still see miracles of the Eucharist in Novus Ordo Mass parishes. But despite all the offenses attacking against our Lord, one of the things that we have to admit is that in many instances where the Novus Ordo Mass has just been developed or constructed in such a way where it leads to abuses. In other words, just like in the days of Israel, Judges 21:25, in those days there was no king in Israel, and every man did what was right in his own eyes. Today we see this modernist spirit of Vatican II post-1965, where basically every diocese, every parish, every quote-unquote liturgy committee celebrates the Mass according to their what's right in their own eyes, according to their particular tradition of their parish. And again, this really goes against what St. Paul says in 1 Corinthians 14:33. God is not a God of confusion, but he's a God of peace and harmony. What I find in the traditional Latin Mass, I find that there is uniformity from one TLM to another. You don't find that in the Novus Ordo Mass. There's more liturgical confusion and conflict. You go from one parish to another. Oh, in this parish, we hold hands. Oh, in this parish, we raise our hands up in the air. Oh, in this parish, you're like, okay, you go to one parish to another, and it's like the DNA of the Novus Ordo Mass is defective because it hasn't brought unity post-1965. In fact, under Pope Francis, and I've got the date on this, I got the receipts on this, if you will. You have less young men going into seminary under Pope Francis than any other pope since 1965. You also have more Catholic churches closing right now under the Francis papacy than under any other pope since the 1960s. And you have less people attending Mass right now under the Francis papacy than under any other pope since, we'll just go to 1960, since Pope John the 23rd. And so, objectively speaking, if you're somebody that if you just crunch numbers, it's the Novus Ordo Mass has been a disaster. Paul, comments?
Yeah, Jess. The church is in crisis. It has been in a crisis. And if you don't realize that, then you obviously had your head in the sand or you've been hiding under a rock. Now, it's important, Jess, that we get on the right side of history here because the reason why Dr. Hahn says that the Latin Mass is superior, it's because it is superior. You don't have the opportunity to innovate. You never saw in the Catholic Church applause taking place or during critical times when we're talking about in the Novus Ordo, it's the liturgy of the Eucharist where, you break and you start shaking hands and high-fiving, hey, the Mass is emphasizing great peace between God and man that has occurred through Jesus Christ. So there's a lot of criticism, and I believe right criticism, for the Novus Ordo Mass. And again, I'm not saying that the Novus Ordo Mass is not a valid Mass. Of course it is. Christ is present. But these things that have these innovative things that have taken place, and we know that Annibale Bugnini, who was the mastermind behind setting this up, we know he was a Freemason. We know that he probably intended to introduce or arrange the Mass in such a way where it resembled more Protestantism.
Yeah, let me give an analogy. Annibale Bugnini knew that he couldn't kill the Latin Mass. He couldn't do that.
Yeah.
So he wanted to weaken the holy sacrifice of the Mass. I'll give you by way of analogy. The Latin Mass was like, think about the Spaniard in the movie The Gladiator. Okay? He was a physical specimen that was able to beat everybody. At the very end, when Emperor Caligula wants to try to humiliate him and he wants to win the approval of Rome, he says, okay, you and me are going to fight in the arena. The gladiator's guys kind of laughing. I'm going to fight you, Emperor. The Emperor goes, as he's chained up, his hands are bound up in the air, and he sticks a dagger in his lung. Now, nobody knows that the gladiator's been stabbed. That's exactly what happened. That's what Bugnini did to the holy sacrifice of the Mass. It's still a warrior. It's still the sacrifice of Christ, but he inserted a wound into it by basically by injecting what I would call serum into the DNA, which even Pope Paul VI himself, I mean, you can find these quotes on the internet. He says that the church right now is going through a time of auto-demolition. So Pope Paul VI lived to see where he said, man, the church is eating itself up. It's going through auto-demolition. And again, my argument B is Bugnini put that dagger into the lung of the Mass at Vatican II. And yes, it's still the Mass, but it's wounded, just like Gladiator was in that final battle scene. Do I make sense, Paul? Do I make sense?
Yeah. He's the one who said the smoke of Satan has entered the church.
Yeah.
And when he makes a statement like that, has entered the church, remember, church for the Catholic is the Mass.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can't say that, it's in different places, in different corners, but Satan, is lashing out, attempting to destroy pure worship to God. Now, is he successful? No, he's not successful, but he has been successful in his quest to snatch souls from off the bark of Peter.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's my opinion.
And that's objective. No. If you look at statistics that have been done by polling agencies, here they are. They're in my book, by the way, What Attracts a Man to the Sacred Liturgy and Why. You'll have, prior to 1965, and I got these statistics from major Catholic universities, prior to 1965, you had about 75% of Catholics in the United States of America going to Holy Mass on Sunday. That's 3 out of 4 Catholics were going to the Tridentine Mass. Right. Post 1965, the present day right now, there's about 13 to 18% of Catholics on Sunday in America going to Mass on Sunday. So objectively speaking, what you said is a true statement. What are men looking for? I'll tell you what men are looking for. Ritual, fraternity, and order. Yeah. And because what do you have in this world? You have disorder. Guys want order. Guys want good fraternity, good male bonding. And then guys know, just like anything, if you want to be good at any sport, what do you need? Ritual. Okay, I became pretty good at boxing and kickboxing. Why? Ritual. I got my grandkids are becoming pretty good wrestlers. Why? Ritual. To be good at anything, even a Christian, you need ritual. Men know that ritual, fraternity, and order is what every man is looking for, because deep down inside, we know that proper order orders our thoughts, our words, and deeds. It gives us interior order. And so where do men find this at? This is why they're flocking to the Latin Mass.